Okay, guys, so we're starting the Pre-Calculus 2022 midterm review. Question number 1 says, which statement best describes how the graph of y equals 4x squared plus 3, that's a plus, I know you can't tell right there. Okay, I'm writing, see, there we go, we're going to learn. 4x squared plus 3 is related to its parent graph. First of all, who is the mother function? Quadratic. Looks like this. This will help us review as we go, okay? It's a parabola opening up. Now, you have two new things. You have a, what did I do with my pen? No, we're good. I have two new things in my equation. I have times 4. Oh, I'm telling you. Really? Okay. I'm glad I have help. All right, so I have 4 that's attached by how? Multiply. So which type of transformation is multiply? It's a dilation, which you'll notice in the multiple choice, we see stretched and compressed, so that's a dilation. Now, this is where I need to caution you. Is that 4 inside with x? No. To be with x, it would have to be like this. So it is not with x. So it's with y. What direction does y go? Up and down or vertically. So we can eliminate the 2 horizontal answers. So it is going to be stretched vertically by a factor of 4. All right, we're reading A and B. And then plus 3, is plus 3 inside with x or outside with y? It's with y, so y goes either up or down. Plus 3 is up 3. So the answer is A to number 1. Now, you can find this review, remember, on Canvas, and the whole review's on there, and the answers are at the bottom. But answers don't always help us get the right answer. By the way, could you possibly graph that equation on your calculator if you were in doubt? You could. All right. So question 2. What's the parent function? Cubic. Looks like this. Okay. All right. People out there that are just watching and listening, looks like that. All right. Now I have 2 new things. I have a negative and I have times 5/2. So let's talk about the negative first. Who is the negative with? Is it inside with x or outside with y? All right, so now, if y is negative, do we want to be a reflection of somebody who's negative? No, so we're not going to reflect on y, we're going to reflect on x. So this one says y, we're crossing it out, x, x, this one says y. We got it down to a 50-50 shot, okay? Multiply by 5/2 is inside with x. X is horizontal, okay? These both say horizontal. Now, 5/2, I don't know. Do y'all know 5/2? Would that make something bigger if you multiply by 5/2 or smaller? It would normally make it bigger. 5/2 is 2.5. So normally that would make something bigger, but it's with x. So it's going to make it smaller. It's going to compress, not by 5/2. Remember, if it's with x, it's a reciprocal 2/5. So the answer is C. Okay, 3 should be an easy one. What is the name of the family for the following function? What is x squared? Quadratic. Some advice that y'all didn't take during the first tests. Let's say you can't remember the names. Could you graph it and maybe the shape would help you? Because that's going to be a parabola opening up. While I'm here, let's go over these. What is cubic? That's x to the 3rd. Looks like this. All right, exponential growth is what equation? It's y equals 2 to the x. All right, it looks like this. I think most of y'all remember exponential growth, what it looks like. Square root. All right, obviously it's y equals the square root of x, and it looks like this. Okay, let me pause. All right. Number 4 says, which of the following is the exponential growth function? We just went over that. Which one of those is that? A. All right, let's, now see, I always forget to switch back to the pen. So it's A. What is the name of equation B? Rational. Do y'all remember what rational looks like? Carry in the boxes. Very good. It looks like this and this. Remember, you can always graph it on your calculator, y equals. What is C's name? Exponential decay, which means it would be going downhill, like most of my jokes. All right, and then the last one's quadratic, which is x squared. All right, just because I have headphones on don't mean we need headphones on. All right. Number 5, which of the following is linear? B, y equals x. Remember, linear looks like this. This is exponential decay in A. Whoops. There we go, close enough. What's the name of C? Now, I threw a little curve at you. ln is natural log. It is logarithmic. It's the same as the other. I got to make sure I take that out in your final because I didn't cover that with y'all yet. So it actually just looks like this, just like the log function. That's garbage. And this is rational. D is rational, which is the boxes. Hey, leading into number 6, what is the name of the family? Rational. All right, we've already covered exponential decay, linear. Do y'all remember what the greatest integer equation is? Double brackets. And what does it look like when you graph it? Steps. All right, so a little something like that. Okay, back to transformations. Number 7. What is the parent function in 7? Greatest integer. See, sometimes you can see stuff in your test that might help you answer other questions. There's only one thing that's new, and it's 3. Is that adding 3 or multiplying? All right, so it's a dilation. Is it inside with x or outside with y? It's with y. What direction does y go? Up and down vertically, so not horizontal. Now, is it going to stretch by a factor of 3 or by a factor of 1/3? 3. Whatever you do to y, you do to y. All right? All right, question 8. The graph below is an example of which family of functions? Logarithmic. Now, you know what people get confused with? Square root. Remember, square root starts at the origin and goes out. Cubic looks like this. Rational is the boxes. Okay, we've already talked about that. Again, I will change it on the final. It won't have ln, it'll have regular log. But ln is log base e. We're going to learn logs after Christmas. So it says, which equation below shows a reflection on the x-axis? So now this was a harder question for y'all on the first test. Reflection on the x to the parent function. So now I got a question. Reflections, what are we looking for in the equation? A negative. If you reflect on x, do we want x to be negative? No. So I don't want x to be negative, which is this one. All right. D has a negative outside with y. What are A and B? There's subtract 1. This would be down 1, and this would be right 1. Those are translations. Okay, question 10 was the most missed question on the first test. Hey, Jerry, got your shout out. Wake up. All right. Question 10 was the most missed question on test 1. I had the same question on test 2. People still missed it. So let's talk about it. The parent function, you should know it's obviously square root. Okay, so this is what square root looks like to begin with. Do you see a reflection? It reflects over the x-axis like this. So if the x is being reflected, you would have a negative outside with y. Not this one. Not this one. Negative outside with y, negative outside with y. All right? Then it has been moved right 3. Do you agree? That's with x. You think it would be plus 3, but it's minus 3. Now, if you struggle with that, could you not graph A in your y equals? See if it gives you that graph. Graph B, see if it gives you that graph. Graph C, until you find the one that gives you the graph that we started with. And the graph we started with, oh, I forget I can do this. Ooh, cool. All right. Questions on that one? Nobody should miss that because y'all have a graphing calculator. Type them all in, see which one matches. Or use your rules of transformations. Okay, let me shimmy up. All right, question 11. The graph below is an example of which families of functions? What do y'all think? Exponential decay. Greatest integer looks like steps. Rational looks like this. natural log, or even regular log looks like that. Question 12 says which equation is graphed below? What would y'all say? D as in dog? What's the name of that? Rational. Log looks like this. This is exponential decay, and that is steps. Okay? Remember, nice steps. Could you not graph these in your calculator, see which one looks like that? Yes, no excuses missing that one. Now, I will tell you people missed 13. Okay, so be careful right here. It says, which statement best describes a method that can be used to sketch the graph of y equals 2 to the x minus 5 power? Question, what's the name of the function? Exponential growth. Is the minus 5 with x? Yes, this is the only time you don't need parentheses. Okay, how do I know it's with x? Because it's superscript like x. So it's with x. X is going to go left to right. All right, minus 5 you think would go left 5, but it goes right 5. Okay? Question 14. What's the name of that function? Quadratic. Which equation is quadratic? B. Do you know some people pick A? I know why. Because it's not x squared, it's 2 to the x. It's similar, right? But remember, you can also graph these in your calculator. All right. So it says give the domain and range for the graph function. What family does this come from on 15? Quadratic. All right. Domain, if you get them confused, remember domain and range is in alphabetical order, just like x and y. So for domain, you're going to be looking left to right. Does this parabola go left forever? Does it go right forever? Yes. So negative infinity to infinity is my domain. I can eliminate that, and I can eliminate that. All right. The range are the y values you want to look from the bottom to the top. Does it go down forever? Yeah. Does it go up forever? No. How high does it go? 4. So negative infinity to 4. All right, last one on this page. Name that function. Absolute value, so it looks like this. Hey, do y'all know how to get the absolute value on the calculator? Not on your phone. By the way, y'all do know your midterm is 10% of your yearly grade. All right, so get to absolute value, go math. You can go do math number 1, but the faster way is alpha window number 1. Alpha window number 1. All right, so that's just to help you if you wanted to graph it. So we have a subtract 1. Is the minus 1 inside with x or outside with y? It's with y. Y is either going to go up or down. Minus 1, down 1. Okay, so now when I told y'all 70 questions, it seemed overwhelming. It shouldn't be. A lot of them should be easy questions. Now, there's going to be some hard ones. We'll see. 17 says, which of the following is a rational number? Now, let's go back to rational versus irrational. Back when we started, I said don't ever test to see if something's rational. Test to see if it's irrational. How do we know if a number is irrational? First thing, it might have what in it? Pi, or e, or a square root of a non-perfect square. There we go. So D has pi in it. It's not rational. Is the square root of 64 nice? Yes. That's going to be your rational. That's going to be my answer. Square root of 6, not perfect square. That's irrational. Square root of 5, not a perfect square. That's irrational. The answer is A. Now, what Jay Sean said was you could just type them all in your calculator, and the one that's the crazy decimal that can't be changed back into a fraction, that's irrational. That's what an irrational number is. It has a decimal that never stops, never repeats. It cannot be written as a fraction. Okay, that should be an easier question on the test. 18 is where we start to get a little tricky. It says multiply and simplify if possible. So you have a monomial times a binomial, so we need to distribute. So this was our test 2 on radicals and exponents and all that. So if you have a square root times a square root, you get a square root of what's underneath. So 7x times x is 7x squared. Square root of 7x times negative 7, square root of 7. All right, so we have a 1 times negative 7, which is negative 7. Square root times square root, you multiply what's under the square roots. 7x times 7 is 49x. All right, in the first one, which one of those is a perfect square? X squared. You're going to be left with radical 7. So square root of x squared is x. You're left with radical 7. In the second one, that's the perfect square. That's what's left. Now, here's where people make mistakes. When you bring out the square root of 49, that is going to be a 7 times a negative 7, which is negative 49, square root of x. All right? So the answer is B. Question 19. We've been doing this for a minute. All right? So do y'all know what the biggest perfect square goes into 50? 25 and 2. That's the perfect square. That's not. What's the biggest perfect square that goes into 18? 9 and 2. Perfect square, not. And then square root of 2 cannot be broken down, so we just rewrite it. So square root of 25 is 5 radical 2. Square root of 9 is 3. We're left with 3 radical 2 minus radical 2. So you have 5 plus 3, that's 8, minus how many? Minus 1. 8 minus 1 is going to give you 7 radical 2. Okay, some other things you could do right here. Let me see if I can pull this up. Could you not type the original into the calculator? Oh, I got to go back to this. So if I go to the calculator and I type it in, come on now. Why is it not working? There we go. Okay. So, well, and you don't even have to have imaginary on this one because you don't have any square roots, but you should be in A plus BI form. So if you typed in the original second square root of 50 plus the square root of 18, now, see, I think it's faster to do the problem, but you got to attack how you have to attack, minus square root of 2. You get that crazy decimal. So then what you're looking for, there we go, come on. Then you want to type these in until you find the one that matches. If you type in 34 square root of 2, not the same decimal. If you type in 7 square root of 2, same decimal. It's magic. Okay. Pause. Okay. Quit hitting that. All right, simplify 3 square root of 2a minus 6 square root of 2a. Those are like terms, so 3 minus 6 is going to be negative 3 square root of 2a. Shut the front door. All right, 21 wants you to simplify. Is the square root of 36 a perfect square? Yes, so it's 6. So look, boom, get rid of those. What's the square root of g to the 6th? G to the 3rd. Because remember, if it's the square root, you're going to take 6 divided by 2 to get 3. All right, 22 helps us with that same process. The cube root of 27, by the way, cube root is on the calculator, math number 4. That's 3. Well, look, I got a 50-50 shot. And then I'm going to take my exponents and I'm dividing by that root. So 15 over 3 is 5 and 24 over 3 is 8. Multiply and simplify. So square root of 6 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 12. Now look at choice A. Good distractor. But can 12 be divided by a perfect square? Yes. So that is going to be 4 times 3. So 2 radical 3 is the answer. C. Now I need to caution you right here. Caution light. We're in Crofton. We're not as far out as Jerry lives. That's why he's tired, because he had to wake up this morning and feed the chickens and milk the cows. Guys, if you type in square root of 12, it's going to give you this decimal. And if you type in this, it's going to give you the same decimal. So if you get the same decimal, I guess I should show you. You get the one that's more simplified. Very good. So if I type in the original problems, whoever's phone is on, put it on silent. So if I got, you break it, you buy it. If you got square root of 6 times square root of 2, it gives me that decimal. And I type in square root of 12. So this, people that just depend on the calculator, you still got to be smart enough to know how to use the calculator. You get the same answer. You're like, yes, that's it. But look, 2 radical 3 is also the same. So you want to pick the one that's more broken down, which is this one. It's sort of like, did it again. It's sort of like 8/16 and 1/2. They're the same, 0.5, but that one's more simplified. Number 24 says simplify. You got a binomial divided by a binomial. And no, you can't just cancel these. Obviously, look at your answers. All right? So I don't know if y'all remember this or not, but you can have a radical in the denominator. So you want to rationalize by multiplying by the conjugate. Don't hate conjugate. And you're multiplying by the conjugate of the denominator. So instead of square root of 3 plus 6, it's going to be square root of 3 minus square root of 6. And if you do it on the top, you got to do it on the bottom. So on top, you got a binomial times a binomial. In the bottom, you got a binomial times a binomial. On top, you're going to have to FOIL or distribute twice, excuse me. So square root of 3 times square root of 3 is the square root of 9. That's just 3. Square root of 3 times square root of 6 is square root of negative square root of 18. Inside, you have inner times inner, and then last times last. You also have another negative square root of 18. And last times last, watch your signs right here. A negative times a negative is a positive. Square root of 6 times square root of 6 is 6. Okay? In the denominator, you have conjugates. So you don't have to FOIL. You can just what? FLA. FLA means you can do first times first and last times last. So square root of 3 times square root of 3 is 3. Square root of 6 times negative square root of 6 is negative 6. Okay, now I'm just going to stop right here. What's the denominator going to simplify to? Negative 3. Which answer has almost a negative 3 in it? C. Okay, but let's go on and finish. So in the numerator, we have 3 plus 6, which is 9. Negative 1 minus 1 gives you negative 2 square roots of 18, which is not broken down, by the way. And down here we got negative 3. So I'm going to do two things. I can't believe they left it as square root of 18. Can you? Because that's really 9 times 2. So this problem is actually not simplified as far as it could be. But we got to, or is it? Told you it gets more complicated. You can't stop up here. Because there is an answer with a radical 2. Look, do my answers have 9 minus 2 in them? Ooh, caution light. So now watch. We're going to break down the square root of 18. This is really 9 times 2. Perfect square, not perfect square. So bring over your 9 minus the square root of 9 is going to be 3. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6, radical 2. All over negative 3, and then what can you divide all 3 terms by? Negative 3. So 9 divided by negative 3 is negative 3. Negative 6 divided by negative 3 is positive 2, radical 2. Do you think that was one of the most missed questions on that test? Yup. Because people get moving so fast and they think they can jump at the answer when really just finish out the math. Okay, 25. Square root of 90x to the 18th over square root of 2x. When you have a radical divided by a radical, you can just divide what's inside the radicals. So 90 divided by 2 is 45. That's weird. That's a 5. And x to the 18th divided by x is x to the 17th. Okay? Now, I need to see what perfect square goes into 45. 9. 9 times 5. That's a perfect square. That's not. X to the 17th is not a perfect square, so I want to break it down as what? X to the 16th times x. Very good. That's a perfect square. That's not. So I should be left with 5x under the radical. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of x to the 16th is x to the 8th. And that answer is up there. Don't y'all hate this one? Because if you get it wrong, you're like, yes, none of these. Most of the time. If that was the choice on a lot of these, that's what, never mind. All right, that's rude. 26 says, what is the simplest form of the product? Product means multiply. So you got stuff under the radical, so you're multiplying. What did I forget to do? Touch marker? All right. You're going to multiply what's under the radical. So 50 times 6, what's that, like 300? Sure, I don't have a calculator, but all right. X to the 7th times another x is x to the 8th. Y times 7 times y the 4th is going to be y to the 11th. Remember, when it's base times base, you add exponents. Biggest perfect square that goes into 300 is 100. 100 times 3. By the way, yeah, and there is only one like that, so really C is going to be our answer, but let's review. X to the 8th is a perfect square. That's a perfect square. That's not. X to the 8th is a perfect square. Y to the 11th we're going to write as y to the 10th times y to the 1st. Perfect square, not perfect square. So square root of 100 is 10. Square root of x to the 8th is x to the 4th. Square root of y to the 10th is y to the 5th. And we're left with radical, or square root of 3y. So your answer is C. That's not too bad. Okay, hold on. 27 is the cube root. So make sure you watch the index there, the cube root of 108. Now, those will be on the board like they are now. If you need help, look. I see a 3 and a 4. So what's 108 divided by 4? What? 27. Good job, man. Which is a perfect cube. So I want to rewrite 108 as 27 times 4. All right. A to the 16th, to make it a perfect cube root, you got to have something that's divisible by 3. So it's a to the 15th times a. That's the perfect cube root. That's not. B to the 9th is already a perfect cube root because you can divide it by 3. So the cube root of 27 is 3. The cube root of a to the 15th is a to the 5th because you're dividing by 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3, and you're left with the cube root of 4a. And we need to go on and work that out. Oh, that is the answer. I got excited. You should always check it because none of these is a choice. All right. Why do you only have to fluh, Jay Sean, on number 28? Now, be careful. What's not the word opposites? What's the word? Conjugates. As a noun, it's conjugates. All right. So one's a minus, one's a plus. So you can just fluh. Not Florida, fluh. I knew what you meant too. First times first, last times last. So 5 times 5 is 25. A negative times a positive is a negative. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. We get 23. Now let me give you some advice here. Test taking skills. Look at all your answers. Are they nice? Couldn't you just type this in the calculator then? Sure enough. Okay. Last problem on this page. What is the product? Now, can I fluh on this one? No, you're going to have to FOIL. So FOIL means first times first, outer times outer, inner times inner, last times last. That's also the distributive property twice. So we got a 7 times 8. That's what, 56? 7 times radical 2 is 7 radical 2. Negative radical 2 times 8 is negative 8 radical 2. And last times last, you got a negative times a positive. That's a negative. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. Like terms, 56 minus 2 is 54. 7 minus 8 is negative 1 radical 2. The answer is C. 30 wants the fourth root. Now look at all your answers. They're all nice numbers. So that is a perfect root. So now to do fourth root on your calculator, you would need to type in a 4, math number 5, and type in 81, and it's 3. Also, you can look over here at the chart where it says x to the fourth and 81. Go over here. The fourth root of 81 is 3. So that is a perfect fourth root. 20 can be divided by 4, and so can 8. So we get 3. 20 divided by 4 is x to the fifth. 8 divided by 4 is y to the second, which is B. 31, when you have a radical divided by a radical, you would divide what's on the inside. But 6 can't be divided by 5, can it? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to rationalize. We're going to multiply top and bottom by that radical that's in the denominator. So we got square root of 5, x to the second, y to the fourth. In the numerator, you got a square root times a square root. So we're just going to keep the square root and multiply what's underneath. So 6 times 5 is 30. X to the eighth times x squared. You're adding exponents. You get x to the 10th. Y to the ninth times y to the fourth. You add, you get y to the 13th. And in the denominator, it's actually easy because a radical times itself gives you what's underneath. Okay, so we're getting there. Can you break down 30? Square root of 30? There's no perfect square that goes into 30. Can you take the square root of 10? Yeah. Can you break down y to the 13th? Yes, I'm going to do that up here. This is going to be y to the 12th times y. So underneath, I'm going to be left with radical 30 and y. All right. And what comes out is going to be the square root of x to the 10th, which is x to the 5th, and the square root of y to the 12th, which is y to the 6th. And we got this. Now that shouldn't be an answer. If it is, it's not simplified because 2 of these x's on the bottom are going to cancel with 2 of these x's on top. 4 of these y's on the bottom are cancel with 4 of those, leaving you with 2. So your answer is x cubed y cubed over 5 radical 30y.